David K. Johnston, Perfectly Legal. The covert campaign to rig our tax system to benefit the super rich and cheat everybody else. In Perfectly Legal, David K. Johnston explores the intricate and controversial workings of the U.S. tax system, exposing tax loopholes that benefit the super rich while the middle class and the poor bear a larger share of the costs. The book examines several schemes by which the wealthiest Americans, with the help of tax attorneys, minimize their tax liabilities, leading the nation toward greater wealth inequality. Through case studies on tax deductions, Social Security taxes, executive pay, hedge funds, and corporate jets, Johnston breaks down complex concepts to offer readers a comprehensive look at the tax system's inadequacies and the political mechanisms that perpetuate them.
Flaws in tax system. The U.S. tax structure is flawed, allowing the wealthy to avoid paying their fair share of taxes, and the IRS lacks the resources to pursue them. This results in the rich getting richer while the middle class and poor pay more for societal benefits. The middle class versus the wealthy, a taxing comparison. The wealthiest Americans pay less in federal taxes compared to the middle class due to loopholes and tax shelters, according to a book. In 2000, the top 1% earners paid only 25% in federal taxes despite earning 21% of the reported income. Meanwhile, the middle class faced a higher tax bill, and the wealthiest Americans enjoyed non-wage wealth benefits from investments in real estate partnerships and other sources that are easy to shelter from taxes. The IRS audits a higher percentage of working poor taxpayers and small business owners than multimillionaires, painting a picture of a rigged tax system. The tax cuts dating back to the George W. Bush era have mostly helped the super-rich amass more wealth, and the middle class has seen little growth since then. The book concludes that when governments set tax rates, they decide who will thrive and by how much. Skewed tax system. The mortgage interest tax deduction is a case in point of how the tax system tends to favor the rich. This deduction was intended to promote homeownership, but it's turned into a subsidy for wealthy homeowners. The deduction benefits those who can afford more expensive homes and pay more in tax-deductible interest. As a result, the tax break is more attractive to high earners. In 2000, taxpayers earning $500,000 to $1 million saved an average of $6,678, in contrast to those earning $50,000 to $75,000, who saved $1,128. Some argue that ending the deduction could cause significant drops in property values. The rich's hidden tax breaks. The Social Security tax system unfairly burdens the working poor and middle class to the benefit of the rich. While 3/4 of taxpayers pay more in Social Security taxes than income taxes, those earning above $87,000 are exempted, providing a massive tax break. Consequently, someone who makes $100 million a year is only charged $10,788 in Social Security taxes, the same as a couple making $87,000 annually. This system is just one of the many ways the wealthy receive tax breaks that remain unknown to the average citizen. The ugly truth about executive pay. Executive pay has reached unprecedented heights, with CEOs taking advantage of tax-deferred compensation packages. This has hurt shareholders who end up footing the bill by paying higher taxes while CEOs receive multimillion-dollar salaries. Board members, who also benefit from this arrangement, make it difficult for shareholders to challenge executive pay levels. The situation is dire, and policymakers need to take action to protect shareholders from being exploited by top executives. Tax havens and hedge funds. Hedge fund managers can save huge amounts in taxes by deferring their income in offshore tax havens. These funds cater to wealthy investors and are unregulated. American corporations also use foreign countries to accrue costs and build up profits in tax havens. Additionally, they can reap tax benefits by nesting intellectual property in other countries. The tax breaks and corporate jets of CEOs. The book brings to the forefront the way the tax policy of the U.S. Congress benefits the super-rich through outrageous tax breaks, which enable companies to write off the costs of executives' trips, such as the use of posh corporate jets for personal travel. The book uses Jack Welch as an example, as after he retired in 2001, General Electric gave him the use of a $50 million Boeing 737, which he pays nothing to use. Additionally, Welch pays only a tiny tax bill for this privilege. There are also issues in the way the tax code is understood. Members of Congress often misunderstand the effects of tax reforms or believe ideologically driven, but false, assumptions about the tax system. The wealthy are also far likelier to lobby Congress and donate to politicians' campaigns, which skews elected officials' view of the tax system. Since the 1980s, Republicans in Congress and the White House routinely supported the interests of the super-rich. The result is that members of the middle and upper-middle classes have seen their tax burdens rise in relation to the bills paid by the super-rich. The estate tax debate. The estate tax debate sparked political pitfalls in 2000 when IRS collected only 4.9% tax rate from the super-wealthy estates worth $600,000 to $1 million. Wealthy lobbyists convinced Americans that the estate tax was confiscatory and labeled it as the death tax. Fear spread so wide that 17% of Americans believed they would pay it even though only 2% of taxpayers were subject to it. In favor of the death tax, Warren Buffett, Bill Gates Sr., George Soros, and Paul Volcker publicly argued that it kept an aristocracy from forming by preserving a meritocracy instead. Despite their concerns, Congress agreed to phase out the tax until 2010, and certain laws enabled families to pass along inheritances with minimal taxation. Additionally, some states allowed perpetual trusts to protect family wealth indefinitely. The stealth tax time bomb. The alternative minimum tax, AMT, is a harsh set of rules that targets middle and upper-middle income taxpayers. Those making less than $1 million a year will bear the brunt of the AMT and lose most of the Bush-era tax cuts. In 2010, the stealth tax will cost those making less than $1 million a year approximately $131 billion. It will take 71% of the Bush tax cuts away from families making between $100,000 and $500,000. This is a ticking time bomb that could potentially affect every taxpayer who falls within the AMT bracket. Tax reform, demanding action for change. With tax cheating and avoidance on the rise, the IRS is facing budgetary inadequacies that hinder their ability to conduct efficient investigations and compliance checks. Moreover, political parties have complicated tax laws, creating loopholes for the wealthy. The author suggests tax reform that begins from the grassroots, such as limiting income deferral and simplifying the tax code, as well as increasing audit agents and taxing offshore hoarding. The working poor faces scrutiny while business owners, investors, and landlords operate using rules that condone income concealment through misleading deductions. The author opines that Congress needs to review and address the issue of financial engineers who can fabricate profits and losses due to complex transactions, which hide crucial documents from auditors. The small steps of tax reform by taxpayers will compel substantial changes to the tax system. The author concludes that occupants of the White House should not treat the IRS as an unwanted entity, else the fundamental tax reform will remain elusive.
In conclusion, Perfectly Legal reveals a U.S. tax system plagued by inequalities and specifically tailored to serve the interests of the wealthiest citizens. The middle class, working poor, and small business owners are left to shoulder the nation's tax burden as the super-rich exploit legal and political loopholes to protect their wealth. The possibility of reform lies in citizens demanding change and holding their elected representatives accountable. By exploring the myriad of tax dodges and shortcomings of the current tax system, Johnston's book delivers an eye-opening perspective that brings to light the urgency for policy changes, greater enforcement of existing tax laws, and the development of a more equitable tax code for all Americans.